With me this morning is the newly appointed Defence Secretary, Wes Streeting. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can we just start with the news overnight? Your reaction to the atrocity at the Pride event in Berlin?
This is an absolutely horrific disaster, and my thoughts and prayers go out to the people of Berlin and right across Germany who will be, I think, shaken by these scenes. And these types of attacks, I'm afraid, are becoming far too common on our television screens. So I don't want to speculate on motive, what lay behind this. It is a reminder that when it comes to keeping people safe, it's not just about what happens internationally, but also what happens domestically, and how we keep people safe from those who would try and create such horrific harm on people just going out, living their lives and being who they are. And
we have the annual Pride event in Brighton next week, which will be, I think it's the biggest event of its kind. Will there be special measures, concerns about that?
Well, these sorts of events are always well policed, and we always in this country get the balance right in terms of policing. Things like Pride marches, and you tend to see the police there to keep people safe, but also doing so in a low-key way that enables people to have fun. And the Home Secretary will obviously, with police chiefs, make the right determinations around what kind of policing presence we need. But I would say to people, especially at a time when Pride marches have come in for some challenge, why do we have Pride marches? Why are they necessary in this country? Hasn't this all changed? In many respects, things are different and better now than they've ever been. We've got more equality laws. We tend to have a live and let live approach. But hate crime's also on the rise. There are lots of people who I think don't accept diversity and difference in our society. And that's why Pride is a celebration, but it's also a protest against those who do not accept life in the 21st century, do not accept people loving each other in same-sex relationships, and in the very worst cases would seek to do us harm.
It is quite strange to be talking to you this morning in your new guise as Defence Secretary, because, you've been a friend of the programme as Health Secretary.
Well, also in your last programme, it really is a case of out with the old, isn't it? And in with the new.
When you say out with the old, Wes, I might take that personally.
You're supposed to.
Young man.
I'm only pulling your leg, Trevor. It is genuinely nice for me to be here with you. And I was very pleased when the stars aligned and we could be here together. And you'll be missed by, you'll be missed by us sometimes. You're not an easy interview for us, and you shouldn't be. But for that reason, you'll be missed by the viewers as well.
Well, let's begin the torment. You spoke to Pete Hegseth, your American equivalent, this weekend. Is it right? Can we confirm that there has been a suspension of hostilities in Iran?
I think it's too soon to make those judgments. There are clearly enormous diplomatic efforts underway to try and bring that about. And one of the things that I'm trying to do, particularly with my French counterpart and our other allies, is to be ready to play our part in securing maritime freedom in the Strait of Hormuz. There's a job to do to remove mines. There's a job to do to give confidence to commercial shipping. And we know that this is having a big economic impact now and will do for some time, which is one of the reasons why the Prime Minister's prioritised so many cost of living measures in his first week. But it's hard to undertake that work of clearing the strait and securing commercial shipping while hostilities continue. And that's why every effort is being made, particularly by allies in the region, to try and bring about the conditions where we can achieve that.
Well, let's talk about priorities. Your predecessor as Defence Secretary resigned because the Treasury wouldn't stump up the money to deliver the Defence Investment Plan. How much extra money did the Prime Minister promise you when you agreed to take the job?
Well, I would say it's an advantage to have one of my predecessors in the Treasury, and John Healey made very clear with that principled resignation that we need to invest more in defence to ensure that Defence Investment Plan is fully funded, and he will do that. And it's for the Chancellor to set out, both at the budget and future spending reviews, how we will achieve 3.5% by 2030.
So they've told you that you're going to get the $5 billion to fill the black hole that Healey complained about?
Well, the Chancellor's position is clear. My position is clear. During my brief period of freedom on the backbenches, I was also clear we need to invest more in our defence. One thing I would say, though, Trevor, and actually one of the big contrasts between being the Defence Secretary and the Health Secretary, if I had come on your programme and focused on a percentage amount we need to spend on health and a date, you would rightly be saying, it's all very well, but what are you spending the money on? What's the capability you need? And what are you going to do to modernise and reform? One of the reasons the Prime Minister's asked me to do this job is because I'm a moderniser, and because my approach at health was, yes, to argue for and to win more resource, and I did that. But it was also to make sure the money that was already going in is better spent, to make sure, and in the MOD context, Ministry of Defence context, there have clearly been long-standing issues with things like defence procurement, value for money. And as I said to the team at the Ministry of Defence this week, these things matter not just in abstract and because it's the right thing to do to spend money wisely. It's also because it matters because we're asking a lot of taxpayers. We're asking a lot of other government departments. We're also asking a lot of the brave men and women who put themselves at risk in our armed forces, who deserve better kit, who deserve better support, whose families deserve better accommodation, and who deserve better support once they're retired as veterans. And on all of those fronts, there is a lot more to do, and those are the issues I'm going to be going at.
I'm sure you're going to be talking a lot more in coming days and weeks about what you would spend the money on. But I just want to be clear. If they hadn't told you they were going to fill that black hole, the Prime Minister and John Healey, would you have taken the job?
If I didn't have confidence that this Prime Minister and this Chancellor wouldn't be investing in our defence sufficiently to protect our country, to protect our allies and to meet our international commitments, then no, I wouldn't have taken the job. But of the many things that I discussed with the Prime Minister before he took office and before I decided to support him to be leader of the Labour Party, I was absolutely assured of his commitment to our defence and security and absolutely convinced that this has not been an easy time for the Labour Party and the Labour government in recent months. There is far more that unites us than divides us. And I think one of the things you've seen just in the first days of this new Prime Minister is that you've got two choices, really. When the challenges remain the same, even with a new government, the state of the economy, public services, the world, you can either be weighed down and daunted by those challenges, or you can be motivated by them, and you can be motivated to face up to those challenges. And that's why in the first week you saw lots of action from Andy Burnham on cost of living. Next week what you'll see is a Prime Minister that runs towards big and difficult issues rather than runs away from them.
I'm going to ask you about social care and all that in a second, but one of the big challenges, referred to already this morning, is Mr Donald Trump. It's reported that you want to repair our relations with Washington, D.C. What exactly are you going to do to suck up to Donald Trump?
The first thing you do is you don't suck up. And I don't think, my impression is President Trump, his administration, that's not what they're looking for, actually. He's a straight talker. He says what he means and means what he says. And I think we've got a Prime Minister...
You trust him? We've
got a Prime Minister... Well, I don't know him. But I do trust the United States, and I do... one of the things I'd say, and we're in first impressions territory, I've not even been in the job a week. I've always been aware that the alliance between the US and the UK is unlike any in the world. And of course that's historic, it's cultural, it's political, it's driven by self-interest as well as mutual shared interests. But just in my first week as Defence Secretary, I have had a unique insight into just how close and integral that relationship is when it comes to defence and security. And it's one of the reasons why I was very keen and pleased in the first week to meet with my US counterpart, Pete Hegseth, where I was clear that we've not supported offensive action in Iran and we won't support offensive action in Iran. But there are plenty of things that we can and should do together when it comes to securing the Strait of Hormuz, in making sure that Iran doesn't develop nuclear weapons, in terms of investing in our capability and NATO's capability. And look, one of the things I'd say about President Trump specifically, we don't always like what he says, we don't always like his methods, but I genuinely think when this period of history is written, Europe will thank President Trump for shaking us out of our complacency and forcing us to stand on our own 2 feet and end the period of over-reliance on the United States for defence. Because what he said about Europe isn't unique to President Trump, the MAGA movement or the Republican Party. This has been a long-standing grain of US frustration with Europe under Democratic and Republican presidents. And in the world we live in, it is right that we can act to secure ourselves, we can act with our allies here in Europe, and of course work with the United States without being overly dependent to the extent that NATO in Europe has been.
Let me ask you one more question about your conversation with the Prime Minister when he took the job. It's reported he's going to make a speech this week about social care because he thinks that previous administrations have failed to tackle the problem. I seem to recall that it was your responsibility. Did he tell you that he was unimpressed by what you did?
He wasn't. If he thought it, he wasn't that brutal. But for my part, as the former social care secretary, there are things that I'm proud of: the biggest expansion of carers allowance, the investment that went in, increase in disabled facilities grant, and so on. But my frustration was, and I said this immediately after leaving the government. My frustration was, I couldn't get social care high up enough on the government's overall agenda. And that's a problem because there are 2 big fundamental questions we need to address. One is, what is it we think social care should do? And secondly, how should it be funded? And successive governments, for reasons I understand, have treated it like the third rail of British politics. So one of the things I tried to do with the Casey, one of the things I tried to do with the Casey Commission was to try and build a national consensus about those questions.
But everybody can describe the problem. The problem that nobody's come up with the money, and that's why nobody's ever talked about it.
And that was the reason.
What's going to be different now? You've got even less money.
Well, I think 2 things. One is that was why I commissioned the Casey Commission. There's no reason why that can't report earlier. But secondly, it's why Andy Burnham's leadership matters, because I have no doubt that he will prioritise this issue. I think you'll see him this week spelling out why and how he intends to grip this issue and why it means so much to him in a way that I think will resonate with so many people across the country. And I'm now in my early 40s, so I'm at a stage in my life where I'm not only worrying about younger members of my family, I'm worrying about older members of my family. And I worry about cost of care.
Okay.
And I'm sure that's true for so many families across the country. So in the first 2 years, we haven't done anything on social care. We've done quite a bit, actually. But we've got a lot more to do, including setting out the long-term direction.
Let's talk about a couple of the points that the Prime Minister has addressed this week. One, he's had to, prisons. You've got a group of families who are saying, of murdered individuals, objecting to the early release programme. But on the other hand, no one should take their fears lightly, but on the other hand, you have overcrowded prisons. And there is a consequence of that. And I want to show you something. You know, we love a graph here. When you look at the incidence of violence in prisons, there's been an upswing from 140 assaults per 1,000 prisoners in 2021 to 237 last year. Similar rise for assaults on staff from 89 per 1,000 to 122 per 1,000. Politics, as you know, is all about choice between bad and worse. Are you going to choose to risk more violence by killing the early release programme, or are you going to risk the wrath, if I can put it that way, of those families?
Well, firstly, I'm really glad you set out that entire context, because I think that's what makes this dilemma so wicked and fiendish for the Justice Secretary and the Prime Minister. We do have overcrowded prisons. In fact, I remember one of my very early cabinet meetings as a new minister where the Justice Secretary at the time, Shabana Mahmood, was setting out just how close we were to prisons being overcrowded to the extent that they were full. And our police cells in stations across the country would also be full, and police officers would not be able to arrest serious violent criminals because there'd be nowhere to put them. That's how bad things got. That's where this scheme arose from. It's not because we have a predisposition to releasing people before they've served their time. People should serve their time. The question was, is there a way of releasing offenders into the community under restrictions on their liberty and under close supervision in a way that still fulfills punishment but also manages risk. What's been deeply uncomfortable, I think,
you've got weeks to make that decision.
Yeah, and that's why
within weeks you're going to be at full capacity.
And that's why there's a rapid review. And the reason there's a rapid review is because, and I can speak personally here, as someone who was a member of the cabinet when this scheme was conceived, I felt deeply uncomfortable listening to families describe specific cases of people potentially being released early. And it really does sit uncomfortably. And I understand why those families are concerned. And we've got to make sure we get the balance of risk in the right place. But that is really what we're doing, and what the review is about getting the balance of risk right.
When do we expect that to report?
I think they're doing it rapidly over the summer, and the Lord Chancellor will have more to say about that. But this is exactly what the Prime Minister and the Lord Chancellor, the Justice Secretary, are having to weigh up.
The other big thing that the Prime Minister's made his own is the devolution. Can you give me a single example of a cabinet decision that you think would have been different over the past 2 years if there had been a number 10 officer in the North?
That's a good question. Well, just thinking back to my old world and health and social care, I do think that local authorities carry a lot of the responsibility for social care, but they don't have a great deal of say over the resources.
Yep.
And they don't have a great deal of say over policy making, so they often feel done to rather than done with. Well, wait and see, Trevor, because I think what you're going to see from the Prime Minister in the coming week and further weeks and months is a heavy onus on us in Cabinet when we're making decisions or setting out new powers to have to justify where they're held centrally and doing devolution by default.
So it's conceivable you might give, as we're hearing, local authorities the opportunity to raise or at least share in income tax and spend it as they want and be responsible for the results.
And I'm not cited on the detail yet as the Defence Secretary, but I think the Prime Minister's instincts are absolutely to devolve more power, more responsibility and more control over resources. We're one of the most centralised systems of governance in Europe. And I honestly don't think it serves us well. And, I've been writing for over a decade about the need to deliver the biggest devolution of power in the history of this country. I think this Prime Minister is going to see it through. And I think we'll be better served for it. And I absolutely instinctively agree with that point, that if you give people the budget and tell them what the outcomes are that you want to achieve, but give them more freedom over how to do that, you'll get better value for money, better decisions, and you'll get better outcomes.
Last personal question in a way. I've got a couple of quick personal questions. Here's a map of what the cabinet table looks like, geographically distributed. You and Miata Fanbull are the only London MPs. Do you feel a bit lonely in a sea of Northern and Scottish MPs? I mean, do they understand when you speak? I mean, what's the...
No, I don't feel at all lonely sat around the cabinet table, and I'm sure your viewers outside of London will currently be reaching for the world's smallest violin and saying, this is absolutely bloody typical, isn't it? We've finally got a rebalancing of politics and a rebalancing of government, and all this London-based media can do is talk about.
They're all talking Oasis London and everything. I mean, I
love Oasis. I was always Oasis in the Battle of the Bands. But look, I think there's a serious point here, which is first and foremost, the Prime Minister's built a team around him, which is drawn from across the country and across the Labour Party traditions, and there are the conditions for a good, strong, united team. And
well, let me ask you about that. There's a serious point here. The former Cabinet Minister, Steve Reid, in his resignation letter to Burnham said, "I hope that those who did not show loyalty to Keir will show it to you." I think he's talking about you. Can Andy Burnham count on your unconditional loyalty?
He can. But I would also say that loyalty to country comes first. And I believe in faith. I'm a person of faith, but I don't believe in blind faith. And I'm deeply saddened that we were in a situation 2 years in where a change in leadership was necessary, but I do not for a second resolve from my conviction that it was necessary. And having, for me, it was a decision on integrity. I'd sat in front of the Prime Minister of the country at the time and told him that I'd lost confidence in his leadership, and I'd set out why. Having done that, I could hardly turn up to the Cabinet the following week and pretend nothing had happened. I do think that what we've got now is such a rare gift, which is a second chance at a first impression as a Labour government. We have a responsibility to show a country that's tired of seeing Prime Ministers come and go so rapidly that this is going to be a change for the better, and it is going to be change that's built to last. I think that Andy Burnham has the instincts, the judgment and the character to deliver the kind of change people were expecting when they voted Labour 2 years ago. So that is this enormous opportunity. But as Andy said himself, this is the last chance. We can't do this again. We've got to get this right. I believe he will. I think in his first days, he's shown that his instincts and priorities align with those of the people. And what you're going to see in the next week is a leader who is someone who runs towards the big issues facing the country and will confront them rather than put them in the too difficult box. And those are just some of the reasons why I chose to back Andy Burnham.
Wes Streeting, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.